everyone. Oh my word, I am excited about this and this topic because it's been my researcher, my educator, my introspective brain has been just working overtime, and this is something I've really been thinking about, particularly since tomorrow I have to do I'm speaking one of the keynotes for DevOps Days Atlanta, and the title of my talk is "What Happens When Treating Everyone Equally is Unequal." And for those who know me, know that I really don't start thinking about my talks until a few days or a day before I have to create them, because it allows me time to think about the title or the fuzziness of the forest of what I want to talk about, and then distill it down into the trees. So I'm very much a forest and trees, big picture, little picture kind of person when it comes to strategy. I'm challenged with implementing strategy at times because I get so high, and so it takes me a lot of time implementing, but until I'm focused, and because I have to bring things down. Everything is big, and so I have to bring it down. So when I wrote this title several months ago, I kind of knew what I wanted to talk about, but it wasn't funny until all the stuff that has been going on with Stack Overflow. I watched a documentary yesterday called from the American Experience series on PBS called The Gilded Age. After watching Saving Capitalism, the movie, which I love. Watching the president or the CEO of Salesforce yesterday on 60 Minutes talking about pay equity, and how even though they thought that they believe they have a great culture, this pay equity thing just keeps coming back up for them. They fix it and then it keeps coming back up. And then I'm thinking about the 1%, and then this whole separate but equal stuff just keeps. So I had all these things to process. And by the way, yes, I do. Only shirts I will wear besides #causeascenes are my Women Who Code Atlanta shirts, because this is my family, so I will always support my family. But I wanted to talk about, what if equality is not the answer? Because I don't believe equality is the answer. And I'm just going to give you a bit of this because this is what my talk is be about. But the challenges I have with equality equals inclusion. That's not the same. White women are making gains in tech, but do they feel increasingly included in tech? So these are questions I've been asking myself. So I'm just going to read you a few of my notes. It says, so the title is "What Happens When Treating Everyone Equally is Unequal." Inclusion is not equality, and inclusion is not quotas, because we're looking about numbers, things we can measure. Inclusion is about experiences. So when you want to improve inclusion, you want to not look at making things level in the fact of equality. Everybody being treated the same. That's a thing I hear all the time. Everybody being treated the same. There's an issue with that, because some people have been treated well for so long to the detriment of others that bringing those underrepresented or marginalized people up to a level where they're equal is still unequal. They need to be brought up to a higher level so that their experiences now equal the experience of privileged individuals. So this is the question I'm asking myself, and I'll be talking about tomorrow. And some of the notes I have is, does everyone need to be equal in order to experience inclusion? The goal should be for people to have similar or common and not the same experiences. I don't want the same experiences as white individuals or privileged individuals anywhere. I want my experience to be welcomed into a space. And then I have, it's hard to argue or deny when measured against experience rather than equality, which is the problem. These terms have been left for those benefiting from privilege to decide what these ideals look like in everyday people's lives, like liberty, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So I'm talking about when you're looking at the founding fathers of this country, we keep wanting to use the Constitution as it was written hundreds of years ago to justify certain behaviors or to use it as a litmus test of what is right. Those individuals who created this had no idea, that we would be living the way we are. And I really got that by watching The Gilded Age, that documentary on American Experience. I would encourage people to watch that, because we are often thinking that, and this is why I'm a history buff, we often think the problems we have now are so new, but they're not. Back then, there were people like Henry George, and there was a movement called the People's Party and the social Darwinism thinking, where people were thinking about then, there was a 1% then in the rest of the country, and that was at the beginning of our industrial economy. This is a time when J.P. Morgan was able to bail out the whole United States, one man, because of his privilege, his networks, and his wealth. And this is also when the Democratic Party became switched and became for the common man on the middle class, and the Republican Party became more focused on business. And this is not me, again, politicizing, because I don't do that. I'm just talking about the history here. And these are things we need to look at when we're creating systemic change around inclusion. So one of the other notes that I wrote is, we make a mistake when we continue to find the American, I put that in quotes because I don't like to use the term American, because that leaves out Canada, Mexico, Central America, Latin America, and all that. So I put it in quotes, the American experience, based on what the designers of the Constitution laid out as ideals, which were left open to interpretation. Even in their debates, they understood the challenges and failed to weigh the experiences of slaves against the experiences of non-slaves. So even then, when we try to put the Constitution up as this ideal, perfect document. It is not. These individuals were challenged with things, and they decided, you know what, we're going to put that off. That's not something we're going to deal with, because the white slave-owning people in the South will not agree to this document. So and another thing is, equality is not as binary as we seem to believe and espouse as American values, as evidence in the continuing struggle to achieve it and maintain it. I mean, look at just the Starbucks incident that happened this weekend. There is no, yeah. So that's my whole thing. Are we looking at this wrong? And I believe we are. We should not be trying to reach inclusion. Diversity, I think you can look at equity when they're talking about balance of numbers. But when you're talking about somebody's experience, that's a non-tangible, that's a tacit thing, that's an internal thing that only that individual can tell you if they feel included. And it's a challenge to measure, which is a challenge for most organizations. But if these things were rooted in core values, they would be easier to manage and operationalize. And I'm just going to use an example of Salesforce. So when the head of human resources went to the president and said, hey, do you realize we have a pay equity issue? He challenged her to do the audit because he didn't believe that was the case. And when they found that it was the case, they said they spent $3 million bringing everybody up to pay equity. But then the next year they realized the same thing, because as they obtain, and Salesforce is the fastest growing tech company in the world, as they acquire more businesses, what they're realizing when they do these audits is that they're back in the same situation. So they've done it again and had to spend another $3 million, so $6 million total, bringing people up who are in companies that they bought. But if this ideal was a part of their core value, it would be a requirement for, there would be something, either a requirement for being acquired by this company, or the first thing they would look at and deal with when they acquire the company. Let's make sure that that there's pay equity across this new branch of our organization. And that's the missing point. Instead of going back and realizing later, it should be embedded as a part of the DNA of the culture of the company, of how we go about acquire. This is on the list of things we're looking for when we're acquiring businesses. And if that thing isn't there, it needs to be there, or we'll put it in place as soon as possible. So those are the things that I just want to talk about. I want people to think about, because we always talk about treating people equally. When you have a system that doesn't treat people equally, you just can't go in and say, oh, that's equal, because we saw that with segregation and separate but equal. They had schools, but the quality of the schools were not equal, based on when we talk about equality. So I'm going to challenge myself and you to think beyond everybody has to have the same, because that's not true, because everybody doesn't have the same now. What we need is people to have experiences that are similar, so that their experiences allow them to feel included in whatever's going on. So thank you and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.